Hey guys, Dan here, aka Wolf, and today we're going to discuss the realism of Abby's physical build in The Last of Us Part 2. But in addition to that, we need to talk about something that I feel is far more important, and that is how concerning it is that a video like this, defending the presentation of a woman's body in modern media, even has to be made, but we'll get to that in a moment. It is also my pleasure to have worked with women from all around the world to create this video for you, and later we're going to hear in their own words what playing a character like Abby meant to them. I recently sat down with a former certified personal trainer with a bachelor's in nutrition and wellness, and this is what she had to say of Abby's physical build. In short, while Abby's form can be difficult for some women to achieve based on genetics, the way Abby appears in-game is absolutely possible, but it definitely requires a lot of work, a lot of food, and genetics could play a role in Abby's ability to bulk up. But most importantly, it's the work, like the kind someone driven by the death of their loved one might have, and the fuel, like the kind the WLF could provide her, such as the salmon farms that Abby works at when she's not on patrol, or all the livestock they raise in the stadium. And seeing as Isaac was fond of Abby, after all, he let her take his best troops on a dangerous personal mission across state lines, it's not outside the realm of reason that she would be allowed to access more calories, especially as one of Isaac's chief lieutenants. Abby has to eat a lot to maintain this form, potentially twice as much as an average person's calories, with appropriate intake management to ensure she's hitting the macronutrients of fat, carbs, and the protein required. Based on her build and her comments to Owen, we assume she focuses on a progressive overload workout consisting of the basic 3 compound movements of squats, bench, and deadlifts. And the WLF certainly provides the facilities and equipment she would need to do this daily. After all, she lives at the stadium. So in review, yes, her physical build is possible. She certainly has the fuel, equipment, and tunnel vision necessary to accomplish this in herself. After all, nothing mattered to her during this time of bulking up other than finding Joel and being ready for any combat situation that would surround his capture and death. And while this is certainly interesting, I find it far more disturbing that we even need to defend the realism of her build in a modern video game. After all, no one questions the realism of Joel's physical fitness, a 52-year-old man with a perfect body, immense physical strength, and the ability to virtually raffle stomp an entire paramilitary army. Despite his age and being battered with a hyper-athletic survivor lifestyle that went on for decades, he doesn't wrestle with arthritis and his joints don't appear to bother him too much. But one 22-year-old combat-trained woman dedicates herself to bulking up, and some people lose their minds under the pretext of realism?
Sweet Jesus.
While we don't need to be the same age, race, or gender as a character to project ourselves onto their experience, some of us will never know what it's like to not see an empowering form of ourselves reflected in media. As a middle-aged man myself, it feels immensely empowering when I am playing Ellie and taking on a dozen grown men terrified of a little girl. But I also have no idea what it's like to rarely see myself represented in media as an empowering central protagonist. And I will never know what it feels like to never or rarely see someone like me. And I will never know that raw emotion of seeing myself represented in a media world with so few of my faces. So, I did a little thought experiment for myself. I tried to imagine myself in a world dominated by women, with its own history and spin on culture that reflects such, meaning our stories and media as well. In this world, the sexual dimorphism is such that women not just give birth, but they're larger physically than me. They are the providers too, the hunters, the warriors, and men are typically much smaller physically, seen primarily as nurturers, homemakers, and sex objects, and have had historic roles in society that reflects this. Now, there's been a little progress in the last few decades. Occasionally, I might see a side male character who's pretty cool. Every rare moon, I get a central character that's badass, a rare Ellen Ripley for men. But then I suddenly get a game or movie with a brand new character called Batman. He is massive and bulky, unlike most men. He prowls the city at night, making most of the typically female bruiser thugs terrified. And on the corporate side, he is challenging all the old stuffy female CEOs as this maverick, unstoppable, rich playboy who won't bend to gender and business norms. And he is shaking up the world both in and out of the Batsuit. and I feel so empowered by his experience. I've never seen anyone quite like him. I imagine for someone, Abby may have been like that, though she is still a far more grounded and realistic character than the Cape Crusader could ever be. While it may not be a perfect metaphor, it still proves my point because that kind of representation and empowerment, I can only try to imagine. I'll never be able to feel it. So if you're someone like me who has constantly been represented in media throughout history, please try not to rain on the parade of those who are jamming out to an experience that is most likely very meaningful to them in ways you could never feel or begin to experience yourself. And if you want to know how it felt for some women to play and experience a character like Abby, here is just a small sampling of what some of them had to say.
In one way or another, as a woman in America, I always feel pressure to be small. To be small, be dainty, be ladylike. Oh, you're a woman, you can't do this, you can't do that. Don't be outspoken, don't step on anyone's toes, don't bulk up, watch what you eat, have a flat stomach, but be thick enough to still have an ass. Be perfect. And no matter how much fun I have with expressing myself, no matter how much I enjoy it, I always feel pressure to be small, to fit in the box that women have had to fit in for centuries before my time. But Abby, no one in-game is eager to criticize the way she carries herself, and no one in-game would dare criticize the way she looks. Her body isn't meant for pleasure, it's for utility. Her body is one of the things that has helped her and those around her survive. Her body is an asset instead of a discussion. Inadvertently, the societal pressure to be small can seep into the way that real women like myself play video games. We're not supposed to be the one going in guns a-blazing. No, that's not for us. We're supposed to be stealthy or safe, stay in the back, and support the rest of the group. But Abby, Abby isn't the supporter of her group necessarily. She's not the healer or the cook or the one who takes the cute doggies in the kennels out on their walks every day. She's well respected for her physical abilities in her group, and she's capable enough to warrant a somewhat enviable leadership position directly below Isaac himself. She's front and center, the one who immediately volunteers for dangerous patrols, the first one to shoot or be shot at, the one taking sometimes violent initiatives or making incredibly risky choices that put her friends and herself and the whole WLF in vulnerable positions. I believe that Abby's experience in her group isn't something that's often modeled for women. Many of us have grown up with male leaders, male heads of families, male government officials, and there are of course exceptions, but historically men have dominated many spaces in American society, many of which are leadership. So sometimes it feels like we women only see men. In Last of Us, we play as a rugged but broken man committing violent and unforgivable acts of hate and love. So given history and the history of this game series, you can probably see why it's so refreshing to play as a woman doing these things in The Last of Us Part 2. We get to view a woman as complex and imperfect, but we also get to view her as capable and skilled and strong-willed and strong-bodied.
When it comes to Abby, she will always stand out in my mind as a character that made me feel extremely opposite emotions. From, I hate her so damn much, I want her dead, to, I want her to survive, to live, to keep going. Me thinking, oh wow, she is so freakishly strong. She can crack my skull open with her thighs alone. Changed to, she is so soft and vulnerable. I want to give her a hug. Abby is so alive, so complex, and she made me change my mind about her so much. I am grateful to Naughty Dog for Abby, and for making me think about maybe hitting the gym. I mean, have you seen those arms? Come on, those arms, dude, those arms. Jesus fucking Christ, I mean...
It blows my mind that the representation of a realistically flawed female character who wasn't there to appease the male gaze would send gamers into fits of rage. Now, to be honest, I've never been particularly offended by the traditional buxom badass babe, and the dainty damsel in distress only feels problematic to me when she doesn't actively participate in her own rescue. But female characters can be anything, and the more we move away from the notion that women must either be super sexy or completely helpless, the more we're going to see nuanced female characters, and that's a good thing.
I was in awe of Abby's physique. She came across both physically and mentally strong. She was able to hold her own, naturally taking a leadership role. I love how she isn't your typical sex symbol, and I found it refreshing that Abby wasn't on a quest to find love or be accepted by others. I like as well how focused she was of what she needed to do, and that nothing was going to stop her or get in her way.
Growing up as a fuller-figured woman was difficult for a multitude of reasons. Clothes didn't fit me properly, kids would make fun of me and call me a freak, and on top of all of that, movies and TV shows never had characters that properly represented me or my body type. Characters that looked like me would either be hypersexualized or treated as the butt of the joke. So when I first played The Last of Us Part 2 and I saw Abby on screen at the lodge, I quite literally gasped out loud. I couldn't believe that not only was I seeing a character that looked like me, though, I'm not as muscular as she is, but she was fuller like me, and I loved that this part of her wasn't addressed in the dialogue or the narrative right off of the bat. Her body and her traits and her character was allowed to just exist and be a part of the story without acknowledgement. I'm hopeful that production companies and development teams can take note from this and create characters that are more representative of different body types without falling into the stereotypical dumb fat friend or sexy thick woman trope that they usually fall into. And I really hope that someday there isn't a single category of human being that feels underrepresented or misrepresented by modern forms of media, and that we can all just enjoy things purely and freely.
Playing Abby while living in a society that is full of expectations about how to look and behave as a real woman meant for me thinking that maybe I am not as wrong as society wants me to feel. All my life, I've never been the stereotype woman or girl. I'm not looking as it's expected of me. Knowing that these expectations don't show the diversity that we have in society, it meant a lot to play Abby. I don't want to live in a world full of stereotypes. I want to be free from that and live and look the way I want. And having Abby as a character is so important for the gaming world and for the society. I could relate to her in a way I could never before with any female character. I felt more belonging, and I started to feel more okay about the way I look because of Abby. I love playing Abby.
I was born in the late 80s, so I've personally witnessed firsthand the exciting evolution of video games. In almost all the games that I've played, the protagonists were masculine heroes. Females were either not present as characters, or if they were, they lacked dimensionality. As a young female gamer, when they began introducing playable female characters such as Lara Croft, it was exciting to play as a female protagonist in a video game. However, even then, female protagonists were depicted as sexualized objects. The inclusion of more female characters in video games has grown, especially in recent years, but oftentimes women characters are defined by the stronger, smarter male characters that protect and love them. Increasingly, this is changing, and the depiction of women characters is evolving to that of a more multidimensional one, where a woman can be assertive, driven, ambitious, skilled, and intelligent without being sexualized, seen as a human being in all her complexity. And that is why Abby is the most compelling and meaningful representation of femininity in video games to me. As we journey alongside Abby throughout the game, we witness her evolution. Her story is that of a young girl rendered powerless in the wake of her father's brutal murder. Rage and grief fuel her self-empowerment as she trains her body to become a weapon. Yet, remarkably, her strength is not what allows her to take revenge on the person that shattered her world. Rather, it was luck. But from that moment forward, through all the power and skill she cultivated over the years as a soldier, Abby's body is what gives her the advantage as a friend to the Salt Lake City crew and a leader among the wolves. And more importantly, to an individual that becomes her newfound family, Lev. Abby is unlike other female characters in video games, and that's so exciting. She's beautiful, vulnerable, and complex. She struggles with her relationships, even though it's evident she loves deeply. In return, she is loved, not for her body, but for who she is. She's a warrior and a leader. She's courageous, even when she's afraid. She has an incredible physique that is strong, but it's not masculine. Her muscles don't betray her femininity. Rather, her body is what allows her to take care of others. As a woman, Abby's body is inspirational. Her body is symbolic of her story, her complexity as an individual, and it represents her personal evolution. It mirrors back to me my humanity. When I play as Abby, I'm reminded of my humanness, my complexity, and more importantly, my value as a person, not a sexual object. I see myself in her. It's hard to see yourself in sexualized characters without feeling shame about your body and experiencing doubt about the worthiness of your personhood. That's how games, alongside other forms of media we consume, influence how women see themselves. When I play as Abby, my whole self is reflected back to me. As a young girl without healthy female role models in gaming culture, I felt disconnected from myself. If I wanted to be strong, assertive, and courageous, I had to reject my femininity and play as a male character. Abby's character represents a future for gaming where anyone can play a character that embraces both their femininity and their masculinity. They can be soft, gentle, and kind, as Abby was, while also being strong, capable, and courageous. This is why Abby is an important character in video games. And if she represents the future of female characters in video games, then I am so hyped for the future.
To me, Abby represents one of the most unique characters I've seen around in video games. I admire the fact that she doesn't look like a mainstream feminine figure. I believe we all should embrace and celebrate what she looks like. Bodies are unique in their own way, and no one has the right to judge anyone based on their appearance. Abby is strong both mentally and physically, and this has always given me the impression that she's a protective kind of person. I honestly appreciate her in this regard.
For me, Abby represents how brave we can be as women. All the pain she felt, the bad moments she went through, but also the joy and the connections she created with people, all of that represents the real face of a strong and powerful woman. Instead of being a sexualized topic, her body shows us how amazing she is, and also how she could overcome all the obstacles that were put in her life, even if it's a wrecking battle or losing someone she loved the most. It shows us that our body is an instrument of our strength and not our own main characteristic. Abby's journey inspires me because she conquered her demons through love and empathy. Her story reminds me that I'm capable of achieving anything and I can do whatever I want to do.
In Last of Us Part 2, we don't see what a woman is supposed to be. A woman that is unflawed and that society deems worthy. We see a woman just as she is. A rugged but broken woman committing violent and unforgivable acts of hate and love. To sort of conclude this entire thing, in the games I usually play, I play as Arthur Morgan or Kratos or Nathan Drake, the physically large, morally questionable, muscular men who beat the bad guys up. Now don't get me wrong, I love men. I love playing them, playing with them, playing as them, yes, but it was such a unique experience to play as an incredibly athletic and morally questionable, muscular woman. A woman who was confident in her physical abilities, comfortable with extreme violence, and who was proud of her body because she had to work damn hard for it when the world went to shit. Abby is arrogant, proud, risky, harsh, blisteringly cold and unfeeling sometimes, and stunningly unapologetic. She's flawed, but in that way she's beautiful because to many people, her very existence represents an ever-evolving and improving society in our modern history in which women don't have to be unattainably perfect in order to be valued or treated with respect.
Hearing all of these women in their own words was incredibly powerful and emotional to me. And to each of these friends and fellow collaborators, thank you for giving me the opportunity to listen to you, to work with you, and for giving me the honor of articulating your powerful messages with appropriate imagery. All of their social media is linked in the description below, so be sure to check them out, follow them, and show them some love as part of our The Last of Us family. And what they've shared today barely begins to scratch the surface of revealing the positive impact Abby's character has had on so many people from around the world. And the greatest news of all, perhaps, is that this kind of progress for the human experience is just the beginning. If this video meant something to you, you can help me build something great by subscribing and sharing the good vibes and good spores of this content across the four corners of the internet. You can stay connected by joining my Discord and chatting it up with me and other members of the Wolfpack, where we're always keeping it positive and focusing on the fun. Just click on the Discord link in the description, follow me on Twitter, and show me pictures of the wolf in your life. And don't forget that I have other videos that may provide you with something you didn't know that you were searching for. Until next time, I will catch you in the wilderness of the mental.
Oh my god.